Hey everyone, Brian Zane here with my review of NXT 2.0 for September 28th, 2021. The show this week is billed as Ladies' Night, a lot of prominent women's matches on the card. We'll see how that pans out, beginning actually with a no disqualification match between B-Fab of Hit Row and Elektra Lopez of Legado del Fantasma. When Hit Row come out, all of them take turns, cut little promos. They're basically providing a lot of exposition and talking about the matches tonight. And that wouldn't be so bad if they didn't have the little graphic in the corner, also to accompany what they were saying. It just felt very Street Profits-esque for me, when they were first starting off the main roster, where it's here's just talking about this other thing of the show, has nothing to do with us. Also a very interesting production aspect of the promos here. I don't know how long they've been doing this, or if I just noticed it for the first time here, but they did this thing where somebody on the floor is kind of following the people in the ring, but they're kind of strafing left and right, and it's kind of doing that the whole time to give that kind of extra movement to it. I thought it was an okay movie. It certainly felt different to watch. Anyway, the match begins, and the lads from both groups begin to get involved and start brawling. They're gone by the time the commercial break is over. These two, for the relative inexperience these two have in front of crowds and on TV, I think they held themselves pretty well. A lot of fighting with the table that we saw on the outside, they were kind of doing a tug of war with it. B-Fab gets it shoved into her stomach, but then later on, she kind of bends Elektra's leg around one of the table legs when it's upside down. Commentary during this match could not stop talking about the inherent dangers of a no disqualification match. I'm pretty sure we've seen no DQ matches in NXT in the years before this point. Didn't need to lay it on so thick, but there was a trend tonight I noticed where it's if the commentary team had a specific theme or topic to get across, they would just pound that into you the entire match. Lopez with a nice cross body into B-Fab into an open chair, and then she drops B-Fab ribs first onto the top of it, hits a blue thunder bomb to win. So nice decisive victory for Legado del Fantasma there. I don't know if this is the blow-off or not, but pretty good showing, like I said, for these two. Relative inexperience between the two of them, they pulled it off pretty well for an opening match. We then get our first of two segments regarding Indy and Dexter's honeymoon. I'm just going to lump the two together in this one portion here. And first off, it begins with Indy and Dexter on the beach, having a good time, and then we cut to far away on this condo up on the boardwalk. You've got Johnny Gargano watching them with binoculars and stuff. The view of the beach, it just reminds me of every time Jim Ross posts a shot of his view from his Jacksonville condo. It looks the exact same. They might as well have been filming it in JR's building. But anyway, Gargano's nervous about them doing it basically, so he's oh no, we can't let them flirt. So he goes to the ocean and scares them out of the water with a little shark fin attached to his head. He's Cheatham, the one-eyed midget from the old WCW mini movies, when they're about to get ready to blow up Sting and the British Bulldog's boat. So in part two later in the show, Johnny's feeling pretty good about himself, but he realizes, oh no, they're gonna go back to their room and have the sex. So he sneaks into their hotel room and basically looks to see if they have protection, goes into his suitcase and pulls out a giant length of condoms, and he says, I hope they're staying hydrated. Then he runs and hides in the closet when he hears Indy and Dexter get back to the room. He hears very innuendo-laden commentary by Indy, but it's a pillow fight, and so he's freaking out. They fall asleep. Gargano goes to escape the closet, and then Dexter sees him, gives him a thumbs up, and then just pulls out with his free hand another giant length of condoms while Indy is sleeping. Man, Vincent Mann apparently wasn't kidding when he wanted an edgier product for NXT 2.0. This has to be, even though they're promoting a nice positive message of safe sex, I have to say this is probably the most raunchy thing NXT has done, especially in the 2.0 era, or I can't remember the last time they did something like that. That was just bold. But what a wild up and down week it's been for Joe Gacy. Last week he was on NXT debuting, I guess what could be called his PC Principal gimmick, or SJW, or Woke Left gimmick, whatever you want to call it. He debuted that last week. He got a lot of attention, including from some mainstream outlets like Fox News, for example. And then after that really started to blow up on the mainstream, WWE pulled all the social media mentions of Gacy from their feeds, which is are you doing this in reaction to the mainstream attention? Isn't that what you wanted when you did this? I can't imagine that's not what you were expecting. So I don't know what that was about necessarily. So everyone kind of thought the gimmick was canceled, no pun intended, and would be scrapped, but nope, he shows up here once again to reiterate he has not been canceled and that the ring is still a safe space. Says he made a bigger impact last week than guys like Breakker or Ciampa or Strong, and he only had to use his words and his voice. He says he represents the enlightened ones, so okay, that's where they're going with this. The idea of he's a pacifist, or he's very much a peaceful guy, he wants conflict resolution, and by doing that he's better than all the people who resort to violence to solve their their problems. I see where they're going with this. He talks about how triggered the people in the back are when he says his words and everything, but he wraps it up by saying, you know, thank you for your time. I want to usher in this new normal in NXT. So it's like kind of a thing where he's trying to take over with his mentality and everything. I'm glad to see that the gimmick has not been thrown away. Last week, I was willing to give it a chance. I was surprised that they pulled the stuff off social media because I thought, oh no, they're just giving up on it when there's a whiff of mainstream attention. But it does not seem to be the case at this point. And again, I'm kind of just waiting to see where they go with it. Quinn taking on Oney Lorcan up next. Quinn is the former Daniel Vito. I'm sorry, I got that mixed up last week when I confused the guy that Quinn beat up for Quinn. So my mistake. This match, it was pretty short and sweet. Oney gets a couple of shots in, but Xyon wins pretty handily with a Samoan drop and a flying forearm. Just get him over and everything. Speaking of what I mentioned earlier about the commentary if they have a specific topic, they just like drill that into you. They did the same thing here in this match. Where it's like, what's it like to be a newcomer in NXT and how do you compete against the old veterans? And like they just really pounded that home with this match as well. We get an in-ring interview with the tag team champions MSK, who say they want to be fighting champions, whether it's against the old bulls or the young calves of NXT. Out come the grizzled young veterans who say they want a tag title shot. You might know where this is going, because then we get an interruption from Carmelo Hayes and Trick Williams, where Carmelo kind of, he says or he hints that maybe he'll cash in his title shot for the tag titles, which feels like a waste to me. And then out come Brooks Jensen and Josh Briggs. They want a shot at the belt, and they start swinging first at Hayes and Williams. GYV get involved, and then MSK do a big double dive onto everybody. Very graceful move by MSK, but the crowd could not give a shit about this segment here. My favorite part about this is when Zach Gibson just yells, "What is the deal? Why is everyone here talking in riddles?" Like, I'm with him and I'm with Wade Barrett, where I really, at the risk of sounding like an old man, I could not understand most of what was being said in this promo. And it just, you can tell that it's not the old NXT, I don't think the old NXT had these kind of segments where it's like promo interruption parade like we saw here, but we got some of that last week. We get it here this week, and that's a trope that I don't enjoy watching on any of the programs I watch, and I kind of liked it not being on NXT or not being very prevalent. So kind of disappointed to see that one. This segment just was flat, hard to get through, hard to understand. Crowd didn't care. It's pretty disappointing. Backstage interview with the women's champion Raquel Gonzalez, who says Frankie Monet will be her next victim. Suddenly we see the Toxic Attraction show up and kind of crash the party, and Mandy Rose looks at Raquel and says, "The belt looks good on you, but it would look even better on me." Some planting seeds there. Speaking of the Toxic Attraction, you got Gigi Dolan and JC Jane challenging Zoe Stark and Io Shirai for the women's tag team championships, and the champs don't even get a full entrance. What is the deal with that? The champions do look good in this match, though. Zoe Stark looks great during her big run she gets in the thing. Io at one point gets both of her opponents in a crossface at the same time. Shirai ends up hitting JC Jane with the moonsault to win the match and retain the championships, while Zoe kind of holds off Mandy and Gigi Dolan here. So that was an okay match, a good showing for the Toxic Attraction, and I think that those two, especially Dolan and Jane, have an upside. Like, they held their own against the champions, looked fine, and so yeah, I'm definitely like, we'll see where the Toxic Attraction goes from here for the rest of the show, but I'm liking what I see so far. A Bron Breakker promo package up next, where he talks about some of his biggest intangible assets, his strength and his size and his quickness and everything, as you see all the different headlines from different websites talking about him in the last couple of weeks. He says, we get an uncensored swear word, one of the first of a few we'll see on this show tonight, where he says, "If people think I'm being too harsh, I don't give a shit, and if you want a friend, get a dog." He calls out Tommaso Ciampa and says he's not a patient man. Good promo package from Braun. I know I'm preaching to the choir, but I do see great things for him in his future. Then after that, we get a FaceTime from the champion, Tommaso Ciampa, in response to what Breakker says. He says, he spent 908 days trying to regain the championship he never lost. He doesn't see Braun or anyone taking it from any time soon. But he says about the inevitable one-on-one with Bron Breakker that Braun will drown in a sea of inexperience when he goes against Ciampa. Some strong words by both guys here, but that title match does seem to be inevitable, and I can't wait. Boa Charlotte taking on Andre Chase up next, who's equal parts Bobby Knight and Christopher Nowinski when he used to wrestle for WWE. It's a pretty short back and forth match here, and you've got Mei Ying on the outside. Chase powders out at one point and yells, "You son of a bitch," another uncensored swear there, turns around, and he walks into a mouthful of smoke from Mei Ying, gets back in the ring, and Boa seals the deal and wins the match. Cruiserweight title match up next as Roderick Strong defends against Grayson Waller, making his singles debut in NXT here. He actually gets the jump on Strong before the bell rings, attacking from behind, and he looks good here. Really takes to the champ here and has a lot of impressive moves, especially in his big comeback. But he is ultimately snuffed out by a big knee lift from Roddy, and Strong wins and retains the championship. Like I said, good look for Grayson Waller here in his singles debut. Like a lot of the other rookies we're seeing here on this show, I think he's got a lot of upside, and I think this match here was a great just display of what he can do. I was not, when I saw him in the tag team match with Drake Maverick a few weeks ago, I was like, okay, I don't quite see the appeal in this guy, but in this one-on-one match, it definitely got me to see him in a different light. LA Knight is backstage cutting a promo on Odyssey Jones, who he's taking on next week, and Jones interrupts and tells LA that you've never seen anyone like me before. Then we hear some commotion off camera. Andre Chase is causing a ruckus, walking across the camera yelling, "This is bullshit, this should have been a disqualification," and that distraction allows LA to get a cheap shot or two in on Odyssey and leave him laying to leave. So now we've seen or heard 3 different instances of swear words in here, so there's more of that edgier content we heard about, the rumors for 2.0. And look, I said this on the podcast last week, you slapping some swear words onto a show doesn't, that's not gonna, it'll make it, I guess, edgier in the sense you've got language, but that's not gonna make it a better program. Same thing AEW has right now. I think it's stupid how they're being so, we can say shit on here, like that's like one of AEW's biggest things now is you want to add some oomph to a promo, just say the S word, man. And now it feels like NXT is about to do the same thing. It just seems like it's pandering, or it's like, if we swear, then it's Attitude Era's back, baby. That being said, I still do enjoy Andre Chase's character right now in NXT, and I do think a well-placed swear word, when used sparingly, can be very effective and sometimes can get a good laugh or get a big ooh or something like that, but you can't just keep throwing them at us, because after a while we become desensitized to it. There's a backstage promo with Trey Baxter and Cora Jade, and Cora's very excited about her match next week, and she and Trey playfully razz each other before they kiss. I don't care. And then it's time for the debut of Lashing Out with Lash Legend. This is a pre-taped promo. It's basically done in the format or the style of a late night talk show, or kind of a Wendy Williams kind of vibe, where it's Lash is there on the stage by herself and she's doing her monologue at the live audience, who's always very receptive to what she has to say. She talks about her past as a basketball player in college and how she was in the WNBA draft and everything, to give us a little more insight as to who this woman is, because right now we don't really know much about her. She talks about Trey Baxter and Cora Jade and tells Cora to get herself a man who looks like Ike Manjiro. And then she says the lash out of the week is for Andre Chase for lashing out at his students in Chase University last week. And that was the segment. You know what? I wasn't blown away by this. I think it's got potential, and we'll see how this goes with more reps and possibly adding guests to it to maybe create matches for later. But right now I just feel why do we have 2 different segments on the same show where there's a character who's here's some exposition about people we have nothing to do with. It's time for a grudge match between Kyle O'Reilly and Ridge Holland. Kyle actually jumps Ridge during his entrance before the match officially begins. It's okay between the 2 of them here. The story is what happens at the end, though, because Kyle ends up winning in kind of a sneaky way when Ridge goes to attack him. When Pete Dunne has Kyle distracted, it backfires. Kyle rolls him up to win, and then right afterward, Pete and Ridge both beat him up. And then Von Wagner, one of the stars of episode 1 of 2.0, makes the save and chases off the baddies, and that's a relief that. So clearly building something here with Wagner and O'Reilly, because Vaughn was the one who saved Kyle from further beatdown on that pilot episode. So that's the relationship they're building. And I guess they're going to get some Kyle O'Reilly rub onto Vaughn here, and we'll see where this goes. Then we get one more vignette from Tony D'Angelo where he's at the docks once again. He talks about his cousin Richie would always be on the lookout for wise guys trying to take a little bit extra off the top. So then Tony would be called in to be kind of a cleanup man or an enforcer or a problem solver, if you will. He says it's a family tradition, and the tradition continues next week when he debuts for NXT. And then we go to our main event for the Women's Championship, Raquel Gonzalez defending against Frankie Monet. And Monet does not get an entrance either, much like Io Shirai and Zoe Stark Stark didn't. But then again, Frankie Monet was not the champion going into this match. Monet actually laughs off some of Raquel's early offense here, which I thought was very interesting. And Raquel looks very strong early on here, but then on the outside, Monet trips her up on the floor and takes over. And I love this moment here where Robert Stone and Jessie Kamea are kind of like taunting Raquel as she's down, and Jessie's got this like rally sign. You have one of those pull-out signs like football games, and pulls one of those out to support Frankie as it goes on. So it's pretty evenly matched here. Frankie does look good, but ultimately the Chingona bomb is what puts her away. So Raquel wins and retains, and then afterward you got the Toxic Attraction showing up once again. They surround the ring, and Wade Barrett goes, "This reminds me of the Nexus." Like, really? Oh, okay. So anyway, they beat down Raquel. The numbers game is too much, and so Raquel Gonzalez is down. Mandy Rose holds up the championship as we fade to black. And you know what? I gotta say, last week I was not sold on the Toxic Attraction. I thought that their opening promo that they had was a bit clunky. It felt kind of forced. So the promo might need some work, but what I saw here tonight between the tag title match and the aftermath of this thing, I like how they're building up Toxic Attraction here. I mean, as far as the in-ring work goes, I think it's legit, and I think that's got a great upside. And so we'll see, again, where this angle goes. Mandy Rose is the next challenger, it would seem, to Raquel Gonzalez, and I'm really curious to see how that match is going to play out. My grade for this week's NXT is a C+ once again. I think this was an above average show. I like the fact that they really pumped the brakes on debuts this week. Last couple of weeks, they just it was a deluge, nonstop. Like, here's this new person, here's this new person. We got a little bit, I don't even think we got any new, brand new faces we hadn't seen in the last 2 weeks show up on this episode, which is fine because I think we needed a break after those first 2 weeks. The matches themselves, none of them really seemed amazing, but I saw a lot of, like I said, a lot of upside in a lot of the younger, newer participants and competitors on the show. Good to see Joe Gacy back. Like I said, I'm glad they didn't totally cancel him. A couple of things I didn't like about the show, just that tag team promo parade, which the crowd did not care about. I mean, MSK getting the big double dive and their baby faces, and it's met with silence. That's kind of a kiss of death for me. And then lashing out with Lash Legend, I feel like it's got legs, but we just got to see some more of it before I can really make a judgment on it. But like the whole idea of like, it seems that their idea of being edgy or being edgier content is more swears. And like the honeymoon stuff, I thought was funny, and if it was just that would have been hilarious by itself. But then you combine that and then like shit this and shit that, like, we get it. You're trying to be edgier, and you can get away with it on cable. But I thought that was just a little bit kind of hitting you over the head, and it just reminds me of something about AEW I don't care about. And so seeing more of it on NXT, I thought that was a little extra, basically. But that being said, overall, I found it to be a positive episode of NXT. 3 weeks into this rebrand, I'm definitely invested and buying what they're selling. I'm curious about a handful of the newer performers here, and I want to see how they flesh out in the weeks to come. And yeah, we'll just have to see where it all goes here. What do you think about NXT this week? Let me know in the comment section below. And stay tuned for this week's long form review. If you're watching this before the Ultimate Deathmatch 3 review comes out, I'm very proud of how that one turned out. It's a big one, folks. It's a beefy episode, and I hope that you enjoy it as much as I had a good time producing it and making it. So just buckle in for that one, because the conclusion to this terrible film trilogy, it's worse than you think, folks. That's all I'm going to say about it. But until then, I'm Brian Zane, and I'll see you next time.